Hey there, Geeks and Geeketts. I'm the Bearded Geek, and I'm going to review the Zack Snyder Justice League cut. Let's go. So, Justice League Zack Snyder cut is out now on HBO Max and is Zack Snyder's vision for what the original Justice League released in 2017 by Warner Brothers was meant to be. It stars Ben Affleck as Batman, Bruce Wayne, Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman / Diana Prince, Jason Momoa as Aquaman Arthur Curry, Ray Fisher as Cyborg, and I've completely forgotten his alias. Nope, that's gone. Ezra Miller as The Flash and Barry Allen, Amy Adams as Lois Lane, Willem Dafoe, Jesse Eisenberg reprising roles from other movies, and Jeremy Irons as Alfred. It's well known that the original version was released after much drama behind the scenes. Zack Snyder was fighting over the creative direction of the movie with Warner Brothers, who seemed hell-bent on making an Avengers movie with Batman and Superman and co. They wanted basically to herald in a billion-dollar franchise. And while all this was going on, Zack Snyder unfortunately lost his daughter to suicide. And then he walked away from the movie in post-production. Joss Whedon was brought in. He was already on board, I believe, to add humour to the movie, which it didn't need. Basically, the reins were then handed to Joss Whedon, who proceeded to reshoot, rejig, and honestly, fuck up this movie. The resulting Justice League, we'll call it, it earned more than 650 million worldwide, but it was absolutely hated by critics and fans. I was one of them. I've tried to watch it twice and I've not got to the end. I kept falling asleep. There were online campaigns, #release the Snyder cut, and it worked. HBO Max, which is a part of Warner Media, they had to relent, give Snyder 70 million and hundreds of hours for shooting and editing, but he achieved his vision. This isn't a director's cut. We get a lot of director's cuts of movies. Batman vs Superman, the director's cut, is a far superior movie to the theatrical cut. This isn't that. This is almost a completely different movie. There are a few things that are the same, very little things, and I suppose the basic plot is the same, but Snyder's expanded. Where does he look like Whedon just really look more like Whedon just took notes, and I don't know what he did. This movie is free of the cringe-inducing gags about podcasts and alien probes. All CGI removed mustaches are a distant memory. Some of the cast who had very little to do in the previous version of this movie have much bigger roles, like Snyder had originally intended. The basic premise is the same, but tonally and in action, these movies couldn't be any different if you tried. Normally I like to just sort of reel off the story, and then I'll do positives and negatives. I'm going to do it a bit different this time. I'm not going to reel off the story because the story is much the same. However, there is much more in depth to do with the mother boxes, and they work a lot better in this movie. They're described a lot better. They're almost their own characters in this movie instead of a MacGuffin for the plot's sake like in the other version. So I'll start with the negatives. The Flash, aka Barry Allen, played by Ezra Miller, has the worst cringy superhero introduction ever. He came across as more than a little creepy. his jokes didn't land, and I genuinely thought that hot dog was going in Iris West's mouth. Wasn't just me that thought that, because it was actually put on my Twitter when I said I was writing a review. Did you think that hot dog was going in her mouth? Yes, I did. It looked like it was just going to be the worst type of joke ever. Luckily, it didn't go that way. In fact, for a good portion of this movie, I didn't like the Flash. His running powers, they still look shit. They look shit in the old one, they look shit in this. I don't like the way he does this stupid push with his arm, and that's him running. It just looks bizarre. But the latter part of this movie saves this character for me. They show just how powerful the Flash is and how human he is. And I gotta admit, I did get used to this really wildly out there Barry Allen, or version of Barry Allen. He's not the Barry Allen from the comics or any of the TV shows. This is a very different take on him, and towards the end I got used to him. If one of the Justice League heroes were shortchanged in this movie, it is Jason Momoa's Aquaman. He just didn't seem to have much to do in this movie. The parts he had were great, and he's a great actor. And playing that role, I mean, Aquaman is a cheesy character. To pull him off and make him look cool, that's great. I loved his solo outing. I actually loved the Aquaman movie, but in this movie he is sort of just pushed to the side by all the other characters. There are some CGI moments in this movie that just don't look that great. There's not a lot, but there's a few sort of fight scenes where people look rubber. It's genuinely CGI, but no deleted mustaches. That's a win. There is some weird as hell Viking-esque wailing singing on Aquaman's introduction, and it comes back a few times in the movie, and it's awful. I don't know what they were going for there. I don't know what they were trying to do, but it sounds shit. I just didn't like it at all. Now, as far as negatives go, that's it. And for me, being somebody that likes to complain, that's pretty good. On to the mixed. There isn't enough Batman either. I've just said about Aquaman, but there's plenty of Ben Affleck and him being Bruce, and he's a good Bruce, but there's not quite enough Batman for me. We get a metric shit ton of Alfred, but Batman is so underpowered in this movie because of who he is fighting and who he is fighting alongside, that he kind of gets lost after he brings them all together. Batman is the world's greatest detective, and he does no detective work in this movie. And it also looks like Alfred is the brains behind the Bat. And Jeremy Irons plays Alfred brilliantly. He's snarky, like we like Alfred to be. But it just seems to me like Batfleck should have been doing the work on the wrist gauntlets and doing some detective work. It seemed like Alfred was carrying the Bat. You know, he was the brains, and Affleck is the brawn and the money, because that's his superpower. He's rich. There are more than enough moments in this movie that would pass as a massive positive, but they fall into a mixed category for me, because if they don't make a sequel, then these parts of the movie are rendered absolutely pointless. The Green Lantern's being used once, and probably not this type of Green Lantern ever again. Just, it seemed pointless and just a fan service. If they bring the DCEU Green Lanterns back and they fall in line with this version, then it hasn't been a waste of time, and then it was a good cameo. And the same applies to the Martian Manhunter. He got 2 introductions. You'd think they'd learn after Suicide Squad, but he gets 2 introductions, and he's a character who to me felt tacked on. Martha Kent basically goes to Lois Lane to convince her to go back to work because the world needs Lois Lane. Well, that's how it's portrayed, but what he's saying, or what they're trying to get across, is Superman's coming back and he's going to need her, or we need her to bring Superman back. Martha walks out and turns into the Martian Manhunter, and I'm just sat there looking at it like, why have they done that? That conversation was clearly written as Martha and Lois Lane, and they've just tacked on the Martian Manhunter. Why would he tell her to go back to work? I suppose it is because of Superman, but there was a lot of care. And this could have just been a Martha moment, and then they could have done the Martian Manhunter intro later on and been fine with it. However, if they don't carry on this movie, introducing the Martian Manhunter at any point was pointless. He was one of the characters where the CGI didn't quite look right. I think they rushed it on him, to be fair. Yeah, to have Martha do a Martha thing and then suddenly be a green alien, just odd. And Lois Lane had very little to do in this movie, really, other than calming a really pissed off Superman down. But in Barry Allen's time travel in Batman vs Superman, she was the key, and in this, if all it was to calm Superman down, it's a bit of a letdown. The final mixed reaction is the aspect ratio of this movie. I know why they've done it. They made it taller to fit the taller CGI characters of Darkseid and Steppenwolf in. I understand that they wanted to see more of the movie, but I couldn't help but feel like I was watching an old VHS on my big ass TV, because I had these two big black pillars either side. VHS to you kids, that's a videotape. That's what we used to watch films on. The score for the movie, I don't really remember it, apart from that god awful humming or whatever that was for the Viking crap. I don't really remember the score, which says it all. Apparently Junkie XL did the score for this movie, and I can't recall anything cool about it other than Wonder Woman's guitar-driven theme, which I'll get into a bit later. Aquaman, yeah, he's a mixed, because he's given very little to do, but what he does do, he does well. Momoa is a good actor. I do like him in pretty much everything I've seen him in, and I can respect that they made the guy that talks to fish cool. And onto the positives. No pointless Russian family. Yay. That was my switch off point in the original. It's not there anymore. They didn't pick one family over everything else just for them to make the Flash look like a nice person or Superman look like a nice person. They got rid of it altogether. It needed to go. So despite the aspect ratio that I've just gone on about, this film looks incredible. The bright, cheery, Marvel-esque sheen has gone, and the more gritty, real-world Snyderverse is back, and it works better for this movie. These characters don't look too cartoony, which they did in Justice League. They don't in this, and that's despite it being based on comic book heroes. I think they've done it really well here. Steppenwolf, he is a much better villain here. He looks better, the CGI is better, his armour, his face shape, everything looks better. This time around he has character and there's rhyme and reason to his actions. You know, he wants to make amends to the most powerful villain in the DCEU and the scariest one, Darkseid. You're not going to feel sorry for this guy or even agree with him like some people were like, oh, I kind of understand Thanos. You're not going to get that with this character, but he has a backstory and a reason. They've made a character out of him here, whereas in the previous version Whedon really cocked it up, much like he did with Ultron in Age of Ultron. I don't know what he does wrong with comic book villains. Okay, Ray Fisher's Cyborg. He is outstanding in this movie. Why he was left on the cutting room floor of the Justice League, I have no idea. In fact, I would go as far as to say he takes centre stage for a lot of this 4-hour runtime. The strained relationship with his father is played out, his mother's death is shown, his relationship with his mother is shown, him becoming used to being what is really a digital god. It plays well. It also shows that he has a good heart. There's a part where there's a struggling single mum, and he basically changes her bank account to make her life better. It's heartwarming, and it shows him as more human than a lot of human characters in these movies. Henry Cavill's Superman, he's brilliant. He had me utterly convinced until right at the end that he could go bad again at any second. The beating that he laid on Steppenwolf was one punch from becoming the most violent massacre on an alien I've ever seen. I mean, Superman even lasers a quarter of this guy's face off. It's something to see. It's been rumoured that this is Henry Cavill's last outing as Superman. and if that is the case, it is a massive shame. He is hands down my favourite portrayal of the red and blue Boy Scout. If you can't tell, I'm not a massive Superman fan. I don't mind it, but I think he's overpowered. And, I just don't like the Boy Scout aspect of him. I like this version where he's an alien struggling with his power, struggling in life, as he would. I kind of liked it. The black suit was a nice touch. I just wish they'd explained that this is his healing suit for the non-comic book readers. Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman, she's badass in this movie. Again, I'm not one to beat around the bush. I didn't like the Wonder Woman movies that much. The first one was okay. It was an average comic book movie which seemed to just tread the tropes of other comic book movies that were done better, like Captain America: The First Avenger. And if you haven't seen my review on Wonder Woman 1984, well, I hated that piece of shit movie. It was absolute trash, unwatchable in my opinion. So here, Diana Prince is brutal. The bank heist that was in the Justice League version plays out far better in this, far less comedic, and shows Wonder Woman as she's meant to be shown. If you piss her off or you try to kill innocents, she is going to fuck you up. This is the Wonder Woman I want. This is the Wonder Woman that is closer to her comic book roots than the Patty Jenkins bubblegum comic book trash movies. Sorry. Batfleck, considering what he's given, is brilliant. He's brilliant as Batman. He's brilliant as Bruce Wayne. He embodies both sides of the character really well. And I've said it before, he is the perfect guy to play Batman and Bruce Wayne. He's the height, he's the weight, he has the jaw. He's around the same age, or he's around the right age to play an older Batman. And his portrayal of the grief and guilt he feels for the death of Superman play wonderfully through this movie in his interactions with the Justice League. His interactions with Alfred and the League are exactly what I wanted, with the exception to his lack of detecting and Alfred seemingly being the brains. However, I did like the Alfred character. Ezra Miller's The Flash, Barry Allen. I hated him in the beginning of this movie. I wasn't a fan of him in the Justice League, but towards the end he pulls it off. He becomes a likeable character and a fun character. They actually go down the comic book route of how powerful the Flash is. He changes the outcome of this movie. He reverses time at great risk to himself and everyone around him, because they fail. The Justice League fail, and it's the Flash reversing time and warning himself before he does it that this could go horribly wrong, and he pulls it off. It looks incredible, apart from his fucking weird arm thing. But he's almost the hero of this movie. Him and Cyborg. It's changed my mind, except for that cringy hot dog part. What the fuck were they thinking? Okay, so if a Justice League 2 is made in Snyder's vision and Darkseid being the villain, I am in. This movie sets him up as a Thanos-esque threat, but with no soul and no conscience. Even when Steppenwolf is dispatched in brilliant fashion by Superman and beating the hell out of him and lasering half his face off, Aquaman stabbing him in the spine and lifting him up on his trident, which was awesome to see Aquaman. I thought he was going to get that final kill. And then Wonder Woman cuts his head off and kicks it through a portal to Darkseid. It was brilliant. But even better than that ending to this character was Darkseid just looking at the head, stamping on it, kicking it to one side. He doesn't care about anything or anyone. He just wants to kill, and he just stood there staring down the Justice League from this portal, knowing he can't go through there, but he's going to find another way. And his presence and the sense of dread from this guy, it really worked for me. He could, if they do another movie, be a brilliant villain. If they don't do another movie, then this was a waste of time as well. Also, in regards to Darkseid, for what very little runtime he had in this movie, he had a lot of presence for the Big Five. He seems like a legitimate threat through the entire movie, and I think they did that part of it really well. Okay, final thoughts, and this is where I lose some of you. I really enjoyed this movie, but the plot was still messy despite the changes. It's a million times better than Justice League, but the 4-hour runtime for me at certain points was a bit of a drag. But you can't split this into 2 movies. If you had split this into 2 movies and released them separately, we would have lambasted the first part of this movie of being nothing but set up for part 2. This 4-hour streaming service is, to me, the only way this movie will ever work. The rest of it, in its form, it wouldn't have worked as a movie to watch in the cinema for 4 hours or as 2 separate movies. 4 hours in the cinema is a very long time, and there were parts of this movie that dragged. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I loved the cast and I loved the look for the most part, with exception to the Flash's running. I just can't see him as the Flash when he does that weird wave with his arm, and that's him running. It just doesn't look right to me. But this isn't the best comic book movie ever, as people are claiming it to be. This isn't a piece of brilliant cinema that people are claiming it is. Not to me, anyway. I'm not a Marvel guy, so I'm not going to say that Marvel do everything better, but they do. And I'm not a DC guy. I love both companies equally. I love characters from both factions, and I don't have to choose between the 2 of them because they're both available to me. This Snyder Cut, it would be in my top 10 comic book movies quite easily, I think. It wouldn't be my top 5. In fact, I don't think that this is the best DC Extended Universe movie. I still think that the title of the best DC Extended Universe movie goes to Man of Steel. It is my favourite Superman movie of all of them. And before anyone starts in the comment section, I'll say it now, as I've said earlier, I am not a Superman fan. I like the character, I'll read it, but I'm not a massive Superman fan. And to me, this version is the better version. I don't hate the character itself, it's just not my taste. They also need to be careful with the Flash going forward, because there's this really off, creepy undertone to Ezra Miller when he's acting as Barry Allen. I've seen him in something else, he was really creepy, but he was supposed to be. I just don't think his comedy lands. It comes across as creepy, it doesn't work the way it's intended, and I quite need to be careful for his solo movie or a sequel if that were to happen. The added parts with Deathstroke and Lex Luthor, they're okay, nothing special. It's a little bit longer, and obviously dropping the bombshell that Batman is Bruce Wayne to Deathstroke was quite big. I just don't like that Jesse Eisenberg playing that version of Lex Luthor. It doesn't work for me at all. But I would actually love to see this version of Deathstroke and Batfleck in a movie doing battle. I think it would be pretty cool. Okay, so onto the Nightmare sequence. If this doesn't pave a way for an Injustice movie or show, it was completely pointless. However, I loved it. And this is the part that a lot of people seem to have hated. To finally get the Joker and Batman, Leto and Affleck, together and being forced to team up is a brilliant idea. You can see the hatred burning in Batman towards the Joker, but then when you look at the Joker, there's almost like he's in love with Batman the way he's looking at him. It's a weird dynamic, and it works the way it should. The Joker's reach around joke to Batman, a little off. Not something I would have thought the Joker could say, but you know, at least he hasn't got face tattoos. But then Batman dropping an F-bomb back on the Joker, threatening or promising to kill him, was brilliant. I loved it. I've never heard Batman drop an F-bomb in a movie, and it was worth it because of the context it was in. Mira, she needs to be recast, not just because Amber Heard is a vile human being, but because her acting has more wood than your local Hooters bar. She's just fucking awful. She looks bored in this scene. I like the idea of Aquaman being killed by Superman with his own pitchfork, and that's why the character of Mira, not that actor, would do battle and team up with Batman and Deathstroke, bizarrely, with his mohawk, and the Joker and Cyborg. And then finally, the Martian Manhunter scene at the end, where he just appears out of the sky. Bruce Wayne wakes up, looks at him, says, "Yeah, I'm Martian Manhunter." Bruce Wayne says something like, "Yeah, go back to bed." Bit pointless, really. Didn't particularly enjoy it. Didn't like the CG on the Martian Manhunter. But if we get a sequel, then it's worth it. If we don't, it was absolutely pointless. They should have left it out. If we get a sequel, I want the Martian Manhunter in there. Just sort the CGI out. It wasn't terrible, but just a little tweak here and there, make it more believable. Stop taking me out of the movie. The other thing that took me out a little bit with that little part was Ben Affleck looked so different to the rest of the movie. He clearly lost a lot of weight, and he's clearly aged more than he should have in a few years. But obviously the guy's got issues with drink, and he's gone through a battle with that. So, do I want to see a Justice League sequel with this cast? Yes. Do I want to see Injustice with this cast? Yes. I'd even take the Injustice movie with this cast, but as an animated and these guys doing the voices, I would like that. But for me, this film just it fell short. It's not the masterpiece everyone is claiming it to be. It's not the best comic book movie I've ever seen. It is a very, very good movie, and compared to the absolute shit show of the Justice League, this does look amazing. But being better than a trash movie does not make this movie amazing. My final review, 7.5 out of 10. That might be controversial for some people, but yeah, that's my review. It was a little bit too long, a little bit too bogged down in places, a little bit of things didn't make sense, things added in for the sake of it. It all chipped away at what potentially could have been better. I still think this needs a director's cut of this, a 3-hour movie out of this, but then I can't see where they could trim it from without making the story pointless. But either way, it's taken the taste out of my mouth from Joss Whedon's Justice League from 2017. So I have been the Bearded Geek. Leave all of your thoughts and comments in the description down below. Do you think this is the best movie? Do you think I'm right that it's overrated? Do you not care? Let me know, and I do respond to as many comments as I can. I've been the Bearded Geek, and I will catch you soon for another review or an unboxing. Goodbye.